Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
So, this is rather impromptu and, just kind of like morning coffee inspiration. Just wanted to share some thoughts. A video came through my feed from somebody that has a lot of subscribers, but I never heard of them before, but more of a geopolitical analyst just talking about the fact that Russia is perhaps doing some things that China has done in the past, like having ghost cities for a population that doesn't exist. Why has China built these ghost cities? I've done several videos on that. There's a lot of videos out there talking about this phenomenon. In one way, there is the thought that these are just busy products. To keep people going, to give people a purpose, to make money for certain industries, and to keep the machine well oiled, because it's fascinating that you would literally build cities that never see a person. I mean, including, again, just turnpikes, you name it, billboards. I mean, it's just weird. And they never see a person, and then sometimes they just get totally demolished. Were they thinking of shifting whole groupings of population? I mean, these cities are enormous. They could literally house hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. It kind of defies logic. But again, we've understood that there is money in all sorts of things, including war. And there's ways of laundering money and keeping money flowing to certain pockets from certain places. Again, often it's from the average person's taxes, and it gets used in these projects that don't make sense to us, but they make sense to somebody else. So that's the key thing. What does that have to do with the whole alien abduction phenomenon? If you are not aware of it, if you haven't looked into the whole alien abduction phenomenon, it seems to be centered around genetics and around creating different species and experimenting, like in the island of Dr. Moreau's sense, with humans and other beings, some very, very humanoid beings. There is the thought of creating a hybrid race. There is the thought that, and you see this a lot more often now, that humans are coming from the future to come back in time to a period in time that was very dangerous, that literally led to a path that leads to the human race no longer being able to repopulate itself. And so coming back to get fresh genetic material to create new humans, to repopulate perhaps the earth at a time when humans are no longer able to populate it themselves. There's a lot going on here. In fact, when you actually look at all the different hominins out there, humanoid type of beings on the earth, I asked chat to give me a list, and I was curious what it would come up with. And it came up with 31, 32 different types of humanoid beings, or, at least we would put it in the same species, again, all the way from Australopithecus. Many people are familiar with Lucy, going back, they say, 5 million years. There's even some now that go back even farther. There's one they call Chad that goes back, they say, 7 to 6 million years ago. And you just look at this. Look at all these different beings, because each one of them is different, representing perhaps a different phase in humanity on Earth. If you want to expand that humanity out to others that are not quite like us. But could this also be just different beings that came here from elsewhere, lived with us, and then are no longer here now? Could it be that some of these are experiments that ended up being a dead end for those that were doing the experiment? They were looking for some sort of desired outcome and said, not smart enough, not strong enough, not healthy enough, not robust enough, too small, too small, too small. Okay, this one's too large, too strong. The brain's too big on this one. We got to just kind of try again. You could see all these different humanoid beings that lived here on Earth with us. Why? Why? So many different humanoid species. And when you look at them too, even though they could theoretically, many or most, if not all, could interbreed, can probably, depending on the level of technology we're dealing with available at that time. What we see is very interesting because you have Homo floresiensis. Maybe this is the inspiration for the whole Hobbit, movie and thing. They were about 3 feet tall. And then Neanderthals, which this is showing at 5.5 feet, but I've seen anywhere from 5.5 to maybe 5'9" for a male. The interesting part, though, is that Neanderthal males were built like bodybuilders. Here you have them showing 150 to 200 pounds. Again, recognize this is 200 lean pounds, lean pounds, not like we have today. And the Hobbit, though, maybe only weighing 45 to 55 pounds. How could these be, living on Earth at the same time? And in fact, Floresiensis, it was here, they acknowledge, as little as maybe 30 to 40,000 years ago, perhaps even. Maybe they're still here to this day. I've actually seen video out of Indonesia, by the way, where they've seen something that looks like a tribal wild man. There was people on a dirt bike, or it's like 3 guys on dirt bikes going through the jungles, and all of a sudden they came up to somebody with a spear that's tiny and goes running off into the bush, and it's very, very curious. Even to this day, we have pygmies in Africa that are in this size range. Now, this one, they say, got that small because it was on an island, and in order to survive with such limited food supply and calories, it had to get smaller to survive. But how about Neanderthal? Again, the head, the brain capacity, larger than humans. Same thing with Denisovans. Larger brain, larger bones, more muscles, stronger, seemingly more adapted. Why in the world would it die out? It doesn't seem to make any sense. It's really, really fascinating, I think, to look at this. When we look at dogs, though, what do we see? They could range from 2 pounds to 180 pounds, depending on what type of dog you have. So, but we know this, right? Because how do we know what the history of dogs is? Because we've taken part in it. We've actually done the breeding. We've, needed dogs to go down into tunnels to chase rats and things. So you have dogs like the Dachshund over there with a low, long body. Now we need other dogs to do some guarding. We have the Dobermans right there, or the German Shepherds. And then even there's war dogs. We saw, before in the Roman Empire, they were going off to war with Mastiffs, Neapolitan Mastiffs. You can see the size of the Irish Wolfhounds and the Great Danes, very different than Chihuahuas and Pugs. They all have kind of a purpose to them, and some of them, their purpose is just simply cuddles. That's it. Amazing diversity that we understand because we did that diversity. We brought that diversity around and into being. When you look at just the genus Homo, we still have all these different ones that came to pass. Homo habilis, Homo rudolfensis, Homo erectus. Now, some say Homo erectus is what the Anunnaki altered. Homo antecessor, Heidelbergensis, and then, of course, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and Floresiensis that we talked about. Luzonesis over here, Nalendi, of course, Homo sapiens, and Homo longi, which Homo longi might have actually, developed after Homo sapiens according to certain timelines. Again, I think the timelines need to be all in question. But what you see, too, is that the brain sizes do vary, and we were not at the top of the heap when it comes to brain size. So why did we survive? We are certainly not as robust as Neanderthals and Denisovans. And our brains are not as big as Neanderthals and Denisovans. Why did we survive? Was it chosen? Well, you think about choosing. How about orphans? Orphan trains. What really was the case with this? Is this just war? 1890s, 1880s, and on to 1900s and more. into our 20th century, you find these cases of these orphan trains bringing tons of quote unquote orphans from one place to another. What's really going on with this? There's just this constant movement on planet Earth of people from one place to another. And then we have this baby incubators with living babies, once seen, never forgotten. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that seems kind of, I don't know, barbaric. It just hits me as kind of off.
Yeah, I mean it's very interesting when we look at our history. Actually, not very long ago at all, we have all of these babies in the incubators and these concepts like the ability to mail a child through our post office system, and that was a real thing. So I don't know. It's all very interesting to me to kind of sit with and ponder.
It's all very interesting and very, very kind of convoluted and jumbled up, and it gets us really wondering what's really going on. The incubator babies of Coney Island. I mean, it's just such a spectacle here. Are you serious? It just feels kind of off and kind of wrong. Is it just because of the technology? Look at what we could do now. Look at this. We could do this, right? I don't know. Those babies look a little bit off too, don't they? And why would you hold them like that? It just shows a lack of love, a lack of respect, a lack of caring to me. More like, it's something that it's just humans, I don't know, humans doing this to humans. It just doesn't really feel right to me when you think about your baby being born. It's the most precious thing to you. You cherish it. You're not going to just hold it up and say, "Oh, look at this thing." No, this is my son, my daughter. This is just a precious gift. Kept alive in incubators. Don't fail to visit the incubator babies on the Gateway. Kept alive in incubators. World's tiniest human babies born prematurely. 10,000 square feet of hospital area. Truly authentic. Ethically operated. I think that's debatable. It really is. Then how about the Cabbage Patch situation? Why do we have all these old postcards, and I have a whole book of this, where babies are in cabbage patches? It's interesting because there's a lot of myths and legends that go with this that will start to get you thinking of things like, well, wait a minute, wasn't that the Rumpelstiltskin thing? Didn't he want a baby Rumpelstiltskin? Isn't that what he wanted? He wanted a baby. You got all these legends of elves and things like that. Sometimes nice, sometimes not nice. Sometimes could do things, and sometimes also could take babies, abduct babies. Kids go missing. Very, very curious. September 1903. Look at this. Again, it feels weird to us here at this point in time. And look at this. Babies a vendre, for sale. They're for sale, like just objects. Like, hey, you go to some auctions, cattle auctions, you go to horse auctions, you go to, again, livestock auctions. That's what you see. But this is treating humans kind of like livestock. How about the whole thing about the stork? Well, then it gets me thinking about shapeshifters, right? There's legends of shapeshifters all over this world, not just reptilians, but others as well. And in fact, when you look at the Greys, there are numerous times and incidents where they talk about the Greys taking on the appearance of an owl. Do you remember the movie The Fourth Kind? That was pretty damn creepy. Based on an actual case up in Alaska. By the way, Alaska, it's one of the places where people go missing by the thousands at such a high percentage point compared to the population that is up there. Could it be that it's maybe a center for genetic engineering? Maybe it is. Maybe there is access to the inner earth there. Maybe it's too close to home. And in the end of this movie, you actually have direct contact from a group that says they're the Anunnaki, that literally are also telling humans that, you're ours, we created you, and, we could do what we want with you if we want to sell you off to the highest bidder or what have you. Again, the owl, interesting, the owl, the stork, and then you see Mothman, by the way. The whole Mothman thing, West Virginia, right? The bridge collapse, all that, was he warning or was he causing, or what was actually going on there? There was a bridge collapse, again, that cost many lives, and you had the Mothman sightings. By the way, the Mothman's been sighted all over Chicago now in recent times. So how does all this fit together? Does it not fit together? What do you guys think? Inquiring minds want to know.
It's all very curious. Good food for thought.
As always, guys, thanks for your support on Patreon, also with YouTube memberships. Do check out evolutionaryenergyarts.com. Learn more about us. We are energy workers, biofield tuners. We do Vedic astrology as well as life coaching. And, we look forward to working with you. We've worked with thousands of people all around the world. Source bless and namaste.
Namaste.